Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Barker, the founder of Connect Our Elders, and I'm extremely excited today to have my guest, Marguerite Lorenz, one of my all-time favorite people. And she is a CTFA and a CLPF and the managing partner of Lorenz Professional Trustees. She will go ahead and explain what those designations mean, because quite honestly, I couldn't even tell you. So Marguerite, why don't you go ahead and I've introduced you, but share a bit more detail about who you are, what those designations mean, and why you do what you do.
Sure. So I'm Marguerite Lorenz. I am a professional trustee and executor, and I work with elderly clients to keep their estate plans up to date. And I'm the one they trust to put their plan into action. And so I'm with Lorenz Private Trustees, and our website is mytrustee.net, in case you want to find out a little bit more about us and who we are. Again, that's mytrustee.net. So the designations are important because I have a bank trust officer designation. That's the CTFA. That stands for Certified Trust and Financial Advisor. And they just updated it to be Certified Trust and Fiduciary Advisor. And we'll talk about what a fiduciary is in a moment. In the meantime, I'm also a California licensed professional fiduciary. And that's important too, because California is still the only state that licenses people who serve as trustee, executor, agent under a power of attorney for finance, and agent for healthcare.
Is the only state?
The only state.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's registration lists. There are court lists. There's testing required in some states, but California is still the only one with a licensing bureau.
Okay. Do you foresee that changing in the future?
Not really. It's a lot of work to get licensing. My mom, bless her, she's passed away. Jane Lorenz was a professional fiduciary and CPA, and she started this practice back in 1975. And actually started being asked to serve as a trustee in the late 1980s. And at that time, there was not yet licensing. There wasn't even the Professional Fiduciary Association of California, nor was there the Independent Trustee Alliance. And she struggled to get the education needed to really feel like she knew what she was doing. And sat with lawyers and sat with CPAs and sat with other people who serve in this role. And eventually PFAC was formed, and she was one of the statewide leaders. She became president of that organization. And she sat on the judicial committee that created the laws for licensing. So why all that matters is because Governor Gray Davis vetoed the opportunity to be licensed, and that was a long time ago. So it took a lot of energy, a lot of people involved, a real need for it. I'm really concerned about elder financial abuse. And there are people that may do this work, but if they're unlicensed, how do you know? There's been no background check. There's been no full review. So let me give you another example about licensing. Yes, there are attorneys and CPAs who serve as trustee. I'm sure they do fine work, but their jobs, their exams, their training doesn't focus on the personal side of being a fiduciary. They're advisors to a decision maker. Eventually, the fiduciary becomes the decision maker. So it's a different point of view. But for our licensing, every year we have to provide a list of all the cases that we have that are open, all the cases that we have that are closed, and explain why our closed cases are closed. No other profession has to do that.
I didn't realize that. I mean, I understood that you guys have to be licensed, but I didn't know that you had that reporting requirement. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? Also, Marguerite, obviously I know of Jane, but I didn't know that she was such a pioneer with this profession. That's amazing. I'm glad to have learned that bit of information about her, because I know how important she was to you and still is.
Sure.
Okay, so you have written a book. You are a published author. Would you please share with the audience, there it is, Ethics for Trustees 2.0. Would you mind sharing with the audience what this book is about and why you wrote it?
Sure. A lot of us know that we need to have an estate plan, but we're kind of worried. We don't really know what questions to ask. We don't really understand how it gets used. And we can talk about that today, but I think it's really important that You work with a qualified attorney to get your estate plan written. And that attorney is going to ask you a lot of questions, like, who do you want to have serve as your successor trustee? And in your mind, you might say, well, I have 3 adult children. I'll just pick the eldest, and then I'll make the middle child, and then the baby of the family. I can't believe how often a 65-year-old gets introduced as the baby of the family. You'd think you'd outgrow that kind of title, and you never do where your family is concerned. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't pick a family member, well, maybe you want the attorney who's drafting your document, but that's a conflict of interest. Yes. Or maybe you want your CPA who's never done this before, because at least he does a good job preparing your tax returns. But there's just so much, because I become responsible for the tax, legal, financial, and medical life of my clients. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's a lot of responsibility, and a lot of transparency is required. There's so many people to communicate with. And back in the day when you were working with a care agency, and I had to hire a care agency to serve my clients, there's so much communication that goes back and forth. Is your adult child really the best suited person to do that work and pay attention to all the details and track all the transactions and be ready to produce an accounting to share with their siblings so they can prove what they did for you? Most families are not set up that way.
Not, so there's the competency level, right? Like, are they capable of doing that? But then there's also the factor, do they want to do that? And so when I'm talking to families, everybody, a lot of people, I don't want to say everybody, right? But, they assume that it's a great honor to have that role and the family members don't understand what that role entails, the fact that it's actually a part-time job, and it does take a certain level of knowledge to be able to do it the right way.
Well, for me, it's a full-time job with a staff and systems in place and experience. Imagine that you're asking your daughter to make a medical decision, and she's been provided with the information, but she's never done this for anyone before, and she's doing all of her learning on you. So it's worth thinking about. So the book is designed to be just a little book. It's not even 80 pages long. Every chapter is just a few pages. We talk about licensing. We talk about how that came to be. We also talk about some of the laws that I'm supposed to follow as a fiduciary that your child, who might be willing to do it, also has to follow. Because it doesn't matter who you are. Once you take on these roles, you are a fiduciary. You're expected to put your client first before your own needs. And that's really tough if you're also a beneficiary.
Conflict of interest, correct? Or it can be.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing you say is that whoever takes on the role, they have the responsibilities, whether they're actually licensed or not. So there's that certain level of, would it be liability that they have?
100% personal liability. That means that you personally can be sued for doing bad things, or even for neglecting or not knowing what you were supposed to do, and you didn't do it. So we get busy, but it's more than that. I think for a family member trustee, the emotions involved, the old feelings of being a kid. I had this meeting with a family. So mom had passed away. I'm the trustee. And the 3 adult children wanted to meet me in person. We don't usually do it that way, but they were in town and it felt like the right thing. Okay, so we have the meeting. And again, 65-year-old baby of the family, that's how she got introduced to me. Of course, she was her own real estate broker and had her own, team and office, and she was beautiful and professional, right? Then there was the middle child, also a daughter, who had been a stay-at-home mom and a housemaker for her whole life. And then there was the eldest, who did all the talking if he could. And he was 71, okay, baby of the family, 65. And we had our meeting, and then he got up and he called shotgun so he could sit in the front passenger seat. And I thought, oh my God, this stuff never goes away.
No, it's
away. Yeah. It's true that, we have an idea of ourselves based on our hierarchy in the family.
Yeah, yeah. And I can see how that would never go away.
Right. Now you give one of those people the checkbook. And how are the other people going to feel about that person having the power? So that's one aspect. Mm-hmm. But then you have somebody who feels like they need to be the investor, or they don't want to just sell mom's house and distribute the funds. They want to tear down the house and build something bigger, but that means more of an investment of money, and it could be years before they get the permits. And, you know, that's not how the trust was designed. What did mom say she wanted done? She wanted the house sold. She wanted all her things sold. She just wanted the money split between her 3 kids.
Yep.
That's my job. I have to carry out your wishes in the document.
I truly feel that using a professional trustee keeps families together when the parents pass away, because I've just seen too many situations where the adult children, one was the successor trustee, and they've gotten along all of these years, but all of a sudden, you know, whether it's money or, you know, it's a combination of things, right? It's the control, the money, the grief, and this huge storm of a bunch of factors. It has the potential of tearing families apart, right? And then you and I have both seen that. So using a professional fiduciary, you all, can really go a long ways in protecting the relationships in families. So speaking of that, what are the duties of a trustee, or have we already touched on that? I know we've talked about the accounting and healthcare, but what are the duties?
I'm going to go ahead and put in the comments the Fiduciary Licensing Bureau's website.
Okay.
That is fiduciary.ca.gov. It's posted in the comments on this conversation. I recommend taking a look at it. Even if you're sure that you really want your child to do this for you, do learn more about what you're asking of them, because there's legal ramifications potentially, and they should know, and the kids should know. Please don't surprise your loved ones with this job.
I was just about to ask you that, and I don't think that I've ever asked this question to anyone before. So when somebody determines who the trustee is going to be in the documents, does the trustee, the person being designated, do they have to sign something saying, I accept this, or do they just get named without even?
It's a great question. So I get named often, and it's happened where I'm not informed that I have the job until the crisis has occurred. Okay, hospitalization, an accident, death, resignation, incapacity, you know, things happen. And then somebody's trying to scramble to pay the bills and they realize they don't have authority. Then they go through the elder's paperwork. Then they discover that the elder had named somebody. Then I get a phone call, and it might have been a month or more since the crisis first occurred. And now I'm expected to pay all the bills and get things going. And surprise, you have the job. So it is true that you can name someone and change your mind and never tell them. And you can have different people in your documents, and you can update your documents as many times as you want to pay the attorney to update your documents. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're confidential and they're private, and you can keep them that way. And I recommend not using your trust or your estate plan as a way to have your children call you every Sunday. You know, I'm going to take you out of my will, take you out of my trust. No, that's not a good thing. But you can keep your plans private because it's your money. It's your money. And I know the kids are maybe counting on your inheritance, or maybe the kids say, no, I don't need it, Mom. I don't need anything. I'm good. But in your mind, you really want to leave something behind. It's good to talk to your successor trustee. If you're afraid of that successor trustee knowing how much money you haven't picked the right person.
I was just about to say, if you're feeling that sense of fear, it's probably, yes, you need to go a different route.
So when you read something like this, okay, and you take a look at Ethics for Trustees 2.0, and then now you can start thinking about, okay, who would I select to do this job, and what kind of communication should I have with them? In my firm, we're happy to have a 15-minute phone call. It doesn't cost anybody anything. We get acquainted. I'm happy to be introduced to your estate planning attorney, even just by email, just so we know who each other is, and have a warm conversation. And maybe I'll help you think about some things that you weren't sure you were going to choose because you didn't understand the context of your choice. Because your attorney and you have a special relationship, and the attorney is responsible for writing your estate plan and making sure that the language is clear. That's not my job. I do not write estate plans, but I've implemented more than 100. So because of that experience, I might have some insight to how something might work, or I'm going to have questions of, what's your vision for that? Let me give you an example, Sarah.
Yeah.
I've met a very nice gentleman who had a coin collection, lots of big silver dollar coins. And in his documents, there was a list of people he wanted to receive one coin each. Nice idea, right?
Yeah.
So he said there were 43 people listed. Well, there are actually 47 people listed. A couple people were listed twice.
Okay.
I said, well, what's your vision for that? How do you picture these people receiving the coins? And he said, oh, well, they're all going to be on the boat when my ashes get scattered. And as they get off the boat, you're going to reach into the basket and hand them each a coin. That was his vision. And I said, well, reality is, as a fiduciary, and I see that on this list, you've told me that a couple of these people are kids, they're minor children. So I actually have to give the coin to their guardian and have them sign a receipt. And not everyone's going to make it to the boat. So I have to mail some of these and get a receipt that they received this coin. Also, I need to have a value for each coin, because you have some of these people listed to get much larger distributions. And so if I'm supposed to equalize among 4 beneficiaries, let's say, the coin's value is part of their 25%. And he hadn't realized that there are certain things I have to do, because it's not enough that I do the action. I have to prove that I did the action. I have to account for how I did it, right?
And do you find a lot of people, they don't, I say this all the time, but people don't know what they don't know. It sounds silly, but it's true. I mean, unless they're from the industry or they've personally had experience with it, they don't know what to ask.
Well, add on top of that, estate planning is already an emotion-filled, long list of lots of decisions to make that some people put off because it's uncomfortable. Or their spouse doesn't agree with their plan. So you and your spouse have children from previous marriages. And by the way, in the United States, that is a very common practice now. And I do want to touch on just cohabitation without marriage, because that's another issue with estate planning. So you have a blended family. Well, are you anticipating blending all of your resources and your money, and then having all of your children, regardless of which marriage they were from, all inheriting equally? Usually the answer is no. And for good reason. Blended families, we have people who've had practice with previous marriages, don't tend to blend all of their resources. They tend to have some separate property. And so that might be a little more complicated, but all the more important to do the planning in writing, because that way your children don't ever have to fight each other for whatever you left behind.
Correct. Absolutely. Explicitly in writing, down to every detail. I was meeting with an attorney last night, an estate planning attorney, and we were talking about that. And he was, talking about his differentiators, and he was saying that, he's very explicit in his plans, because he's realized if it's if it's ambiguous at all, a lot of times the adult children will start warring each other. But if the parents make their wishes known so specifically where there is no question, then there's far less chance of that happening.
Right. So for those of you who might be concerned that, oh, this sounds like a huge project, I don't have time for it. Let me tell you, a good estate planning attorney is going to take it easy on you and start you off with some pretty simple questions. Your name, where do you live, where do you bank, what do you have? Okay. And it's easier for you if you just provide one statement from each account that you have. And if you have any insurance, that you just bring at least the face page of that insurance. So there's some information to start with. Okay. Then let the attorney drive the bus. The attorney's going to ask you questions you might not know the answer to right away. So I want to help you with your expectations. You might spend $2,000 to $5,000, and I'm just giving you a ballpark. The less complicated, meaning you have one bank account, you have one house, you have 3 children, you're both been married to each other forever. It could be simple, right? Or you have a blended family and one of you owns a business and another one of you is going to inherit some money. There's lots of different issues. Don't worry about that. Let the planner really help you with that. And then as you go through your planning and you start answering these questions, let's say it takes you 6 months to get your first estate plan completed. That is a totally reasonable amount of time. Some things you need to sleep on. You need a few days. You've got to let that question season for a while, see how you really feel about it. That's okay. Then after your 6 months, now you have a complete estate plan. And hopefully you've asked that estate planning attorney as you entered into the relationship, what does it look like when I want to make updates? How will you charge me? You know, do I call you? Do you call me? You know, how do we keep this relationship going? Because what you don't want is a one and done set of documents.
Well, because life changes, right? Life changes.
Not only does life change, but now I want that attorney in my corner. I want to be able to call up and say, I'm thinking about moving. Maybe I want to move to another state. What does that look like? Well, I have to update my documents. What do I have to do? So you want to make a relationship with the attorney, and it's okay to pay the attorney a little bit every few years to update things and make the relationship like that. Because here's the thing. I'm sorry to say this, but I think it's true, and Sarah, and it may be true in your experience too. It's the one who deals with all the financial matters who goes first.
It seems that way. It does seem that way.
Right? And the truth is, if you love anybody, and you're listening to my voice right now, if you love anybody, please don't leave them a mess.
No. I mean, you've seen the situations. I've seen so many situations where, you know, one of the people pass away, and then the person who's still living has no idea what money they even have, where the accounts are, what insurance policies they have. Yep. And that just adds to the stress of already losing your loved one, right? So no, I'm a huge advocate of doing proper planning. Absolutely.
Well, I'm hearing somebody's voice right now saying, it's okay, I have everything on auto pay. It'll be all right. I want to tell you that if you have auto debiting happening with your account and you're vigilant and you're taking care of it, meaning you're looking at it, fine. That's you being the decision maker and you're deciding the payments. But that bank, they're just servicing and they're just charging you for making that technology available. They are not a fiduciary. They are not looking at your transactions. They don't care if you double paid. You know, they don't care about that. So here's another problem. That's okay. My wife has my password. Oh, but is she your fiduciary? Is she the one who's actually taking responsibility for those transactions? Because let me tell you, I have seen so much double dipping. I've seen the child assisting the elder with their banking online because the elder doesn't feel capable of dealing with it on the computer. Now child is helping. Elder writes a check to child, thanking them for their help. Child has also helped themselves and did a check right through the electronic banking. Child got 2 payments.
Yep.
And this happens, and the elder doesn't remember giving permission for that. Child says, of course, mom said I could. You know, who's right, who's wrong? I don't know. I wasn't there. So I don't just take over from the moment I accept the trusteeship. I usually look back for some period of time if I suspect something funny's been going on.
Good.
So just so you know, I really do my best to protect those elders because they don't know. Of course they said yes. Mom has no limits where you're concerned, but let me tell you, there should be a boundary between you and mom's purse.
There needs to be a boundary. I'm sorry. I've seen some really heartbreaking situations where even when mom would use mom, right? Still has capacity, right? She knows, but she's just so lonely. Like she's willing to pay her children to come and visit. And you know what? But I've also learned being in this industry, I have to try to take some of my judgment out of things. But sometimes it's hard because you just feel that it's not right.
I want to help your children, right? I want my children to be happy. I'm just like any mom. But at the same time, by making them responsible for that, you kind of muddy the lines a little bit. And maybe you have helped your child every month. You're paying the rent because life is hard and COVID has been hard. It's been hard on everybody. Maybe your child moved back in for a while and just got back out again, and now you're helping. If that's something you want to continue, if you want to be sure that that child gets that $700 a month, no matter what, tell your attorney that. It's okay. It's okay for you to help your kids. It's okay for you to do whatever you want. It's still your money.
Right. It's your money. So long as you're not being, it's the situations where they're being taken advantage of, right? And it's coercion.
Right. And it can be very subtle, you know, and here's the other thing too. I never pretend to be anybody. I don't really want your passwords. I want to know where you bank because I'm going to forward your mail once I become your trustee, but you may not be getting mailed statements anymore. You might be getting everything electronically. Mm-hmm. So at least leave behind one set of printed statements so that I know where to look. I call it my breadcrumb trail, right? Give me some way to find what I'm looking for. Tell the attorney, at least inform me that I have been named and let me know who your attorney is so I know who to call when someone calls my office and says, help me, right? Communication is the toughest thing that we do, and it's really critical when it comes to these topics.
Oh, absolutely. So speaking of attorneys, Marguerite, how does an independent trustee work with other professionals, such as the attorneys, such as the financial advisor, the CPA?
Oh, it's a great question. So my preference when I become the trustee is I want to keep the same professionals on the team. You know, that financial advisor is the most likely professional in that client's life, more than the doctor, more than the CPA, certainly more than the estate planning attorney. That financial advisor has learned so much about that person and her worries and the family secrets and what's going on in the dynamic and, you know, who lives where and stuff. And it's really good to work with a professional who really cares about the client. The CPA, I'm happy to have that CPA prepare that individual's personal tax return. I might work with that CPA to do the trust tax return. I don't really do them in-house anymore. We really like outsourcing that work. So meeting new CPAs is great for us. Okay. Some people like trust tax returns, some people don't. We all end up with our specialties. The estate planning attorney, the drafting attorney may still represent the elder because she has resigned as trustee, but she still has capacity. So that estate planning attorney still has a client. And it's wonderful because then when I prepare my accounting, I can include that attorney because the client's not going to understand the accounting fully. She'll have some idea. She'll see positive and negative. But that level of detail that we offer in an accounting is often overwhelming. Our accountings tend to be 60 or 80 pages, depending on how it's invested. Well, every transaction gets recorded in the accounting, every transaction. And then you add where there may be decisions to sell certain assets because it's a good time to do that. And I'm working with the financial advisor to accomplish that. So it just gives you a flavor of us working as a team with the professionals the client trusts.
I've always liked the fact that, you know, if the family chooses to use an independent trustee, they're not required to move their assets to that bank. So if somebody opts with the corporate trustee, my understanding is they have to move their assets to whatever institution that is. But when it comes to a private fiduciary, you guys can keep the assets right where they are. You know, the financial advisor stays the same. The assets, if it's, let's say it's an RIA, a registered investment advisory firm, right? Like, it's not like all of those have to be moved over to US Bank or Union Bank, you know, everything can pretty much stay the same.
Correct. And, you know, the corporate trustee has great value. You know, I certainly don't want to put down my fellow trustees, not in any way. But I do want to point out there is a business difference, just like you said. I'm an independent. That means I don't have my own financial services department. It means that I not only can work with your professionals, but I can also keep your real estate. Like, if you're really hoping that your real estate is going to continue producing income for generations to come, we're good. I'm the oldest fiduciary in my firm, but I'm one of 5. And among the 5 of us, we have 16 children. You know, I'm very hopeful that we have successors. In fact, my nephews are just 9 and 11. They don't even know they're working for us yet. So the idea is we're going to be here and we care and we really want to do it your way, especially if you're self-made, you've put this together over time, or you inherited property from your folks and you want to keep it. You know, a corporate trustee is doing their best to keep things efficient. And they're going to sell real property because it has more liability and more complications.
So that was also my understanding that, don't mind me, I have to plug my computer in or else we're going to be cut short. So just give me 1 second. I am so sorry about that. I forgot to look at it.
It's okay. I'll take a little sip of water.
So my understanding when it comes to the real estate also is that if it's as you were saying, right, so just the difference in business structure, that if there is real property, oftentimes, you know, the first thing that they're going to do is try to sell that property versus really taking the time to determine, should we sell it, or, you know, hold on to it and keep producing income.
Right. And again, it really depends on your plans. That's why you have to get it in writing. That's why you have to work with an attorney, because you can't let people guess about what you wanted. That would be terrible. And then they have their own plans for the property. You know, not all kids want to come into mom and dad's business. And so they would like to just be cashed out, thank you very much, and just take their money and go. Well, with an independent trustee, that's very possible, especially with a little planning and little communication, and having your estate planning attorney talk with the trustee or with you, maybe together, just so that we're clear on your vision and your intention. Because here's the thing. When you go to court, because you didn't do this planning, the court is trying to figure out what was the dead person's intention.
Oh, are you talking about probate?
Well, it's probate. Yes, that's the name of the court procedure to determine ownership and transfer of the assets. That's what we call it. The probate code is the body of law that governs the things we're talking about right now. And in whatever state you're in, the laws are unique to that state. And you might have family property in another state from where you live. So that needs to be contemplated in terms of how that'll be transferred. And those laws in that state may govern that situation. So my point is that when we don't know and someone dies, and that term when they die without a plan is intestate. So they die intestate, no written plan. And now what is the court's job? You know, in a civil matter or in a criminal matter, it's really to find the truth. And then you have a jury, or you have other people who are going to make a decision about what happens. But in probate court, we're trying to go back in time without much in the way of records and see if we can figure out what the decedent wanted to do. What did the dead person want to do? It's a mess.
I didn't know that was a factor. My understanding, and I've had the conversation about probate so many times, I didn't realize that was a consideration in the process. Like, what were the intentions of the person who passed? I thought it was merely, okay, how much is the property worth? And like, let's distribute stuff. So that's really interesting to know.
Well, add to it that if it's intestate, now the state has a special chart. It's if I can say it right, consanguinity chart. It's about the bloodline. And then it's determined about who gets what. But for instance, if you had a business with another person, does that partner get the business? Does your half of the business now just get sent down to the 3 kids? Do they even want it? So yes, on the one hand, the state has a way to figure it all out, but it's expensive. It takes time. Nobody gets anything until all of this is resolved.
Yeah.
And, you know, so if you're worried about the cost of getting your estate plan done and the time and the energy that you'll take, what I'd like to suggest is plan for the money, talk to a few estate planning attorneys, ask what they charge, ask how it works with them, different attorneys, different styles, figure one that has your style, and then plan a little weekend getaway or an ice cream sundae or some reward when you get your estate planning documents done.
You'll save a lot of money, right? In the long run, a lot.
You'll keep your family from fighting. Here's the question I want everyone to think about. What will Thanksgiving be like when you're gone?
I've heard you ask that before, and that's a really valid question, right? Because if you make your wishes known and you do your planning, there's no question about what mom and dad wanted, right? So what is there I mean, families can still find things to fight about, right? But if it comes down to the assets and the property and all of that, if it's clearly laid out, what are they going to say?
Not only that, you don't have to negotiate with your children. You don't have to tell them what your plans are. If you think it'll cause a fight or whatever, don't worry about talking to them about it. Talk to your attorney about what you want. You and your attorney can decide what to tell the kids.
I like that. Let's see. So could you share with us? So we've talked about the importance of being licensed. Do you want to add anything to that topic why it's important somebody be licensed?
Yes. You know, there's the accountability and there's the background check, which I think is very important. I think it's also a way for family members to look this person up and see, has there been any disciplinary action? You know, is this person in good standing? You know, do they follow the rules? Because really you want a fiduciary that follows the rules. Also, I'm going to go ahead and post in the comments the website for the Trustee Alliance. The Independent Trustee Alliance is a national organization who's designed to support the work of independent trustees. So if your family member is going to take on this work, now they have a place where they can go to get some education. Now they have a place where they can get some of their questions answered and feel the support. And not only that, the Trustee Alliance is offering members access to health insurance, access to liability insurance, and 100% of their education is available just with their membership fee online. Meaning you can get all of your training online included in a very low membership fee. It's amazing.
So you introduced me to that gentleman, and I had the opportunity to talk to him and interview him. I didn't realize that that the Alliance was so robust with resources. That's really good information for the audience. Absolutely.
Yeah, you talked with Dave Coles. He's one of the members of the board, as am I. I'm on the board also. Dave's great. And we all came to this because we all are doing this work, or we support other people who do this work. Like Dave is a trustee consultant and an attorney. And, you know, it's that kind of thing where a lot of us have done this work alone for years. What is your succession plan if you do this work on your own? If you're a solo practitioner serving as a trustee, what's your plan for what happens next?
Can we talk about that for a second? Because there was a local fiduciary that I knew, and I know you know passed away. I'm not sure if there was a succession plan or not. So what I'm curious about is if somebody is doing it alone and they pass away, what happens to all of their clients that they were already serving, but what happens to all of the ones where they were named to serve eventually?
Right. And do those people get informed that their chosen person is no longer available to do the work? So when Jane Lorenz died, we had been partners for 14 years at that point. And that was my stepmother and my best friend, my mentor. You know, Jane was everything to me. And we were not alone in the business. We had support staff, and Clay, her son, my business partner, was in the business. And we'd added another fiduciary, Noah Benton. He's our brother-in-law. So it's a family business, right? And at that time, what Jane had done was in her estate planning, not only did she make sure that we had the funds to carry on without her, but she also, we're named in succession to each other very often, but not always. And so if there were other trustees named after Jane in any of the documents, we let them know that she was ill and that things were changing. And we also informed the drafting attorneys where we could. You know, we were named going forward in hundreds of documents, and most of them was fine. I present Jane's death certificate. I'm named after her in the documents. I'm on the job.
Okay. Okay.
But when there's no mechanism in the document to change trustees, you have a real problem. And by the way,
what happens then?
Court or something else. Like some documents have a mechanism like all the beneficiaries have to agree on a successor, or the majority of the beneficiaries have to agree, or the attorney can select, or a trust protector can select a successor. But that mechanism has to happen because nobody can pay any bills until all that gets done and somebody signs an acceptance, goes to the bank, presents themselves, the bank allows it, and then now I can sign the checks. So if you don't want a break in service, if you want your bills to continue to be paid smoothly, you have to have a succession plan beyond the one fiduciary you wanted.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. So how can other types of professionals help their clients get the estate plan in order?
It's a tough conversation for a lot of people. And I think that if more financial advisors and more CPAs introduce the concept of estate planning, and by the way, these are available on Amazon. You could always share the book with your clients and talk to them about it. It's a way to get them thinking, get those wheels turning, get that willingness to actually get some stuff in writing.
So it's a good book for those of you listening. I've read the book. Gosh, I think I got mine years ago. It's a great book if you just want to think about it for yourself, but also if you work in the elder care space, so that way you can understand these types of conversations when you're trying to collaborate with legal financial professionals, families out there, other fiduciaries. I highly recommend the book. So where can they get it again, Marguerite?
It's available on Amazon. And the book Sarah's referring to, the initial one, Jane and I wrote together back in 2011.
Okay.
Ethics for Trustees 2.0, I updated because laws have changed since then. And so 2.0 is the copy you're looking for because that's the most recent. And it's available on Amazon. And I'll find a link while we're together. And
it's an easy read, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not a book that the information is going to go over your head, just because you're not an attorney or a fiduciary or, financial advisor. I remember the information being easy to comprehend and digest.
I really appreciate that. Yes, it was written that way intentionally because, we don't need to make it more complicated. You just need to think about what you want and let the attorney do the complicated part. Let your attorney and CPA talk to each other. It's okay to pay them for talking to each other because then your plan will be better. We Americans really have this crazy belief that I have to do it all by myself.
I'm guilty of that sometimes. Yes.
All of us are. It's part of our culture. It's part of how we grow up. We get this big emotional impact the first time we're able to potty and dress ourselves. And ever since then, man, that's how we have to do it. And the truth
by myself.
All by myself. And the real truth of it is we are interdependent. We need each other. COVID has really demonstrated to us, yes, we can isolate. Yes, we can survive, but we live better with each other. And we have to figure it out. So don't feel like you have to know everything before you make your first decision. It's just not true. You know what you want for yourself. Let me give you an example. A lot of people think estate planning is about money and death. I want to take those off the table. I want to say it's about you staying in control no matter how your life rolls. So with COVID, so many people have no plan. The hospital doesn't even know who to call for you. Okay? Let's not let that happen anymore. Stay in control. You want your advanced healthcare directive. Let's say you don't own a home. You're listening to this right now. You don't have property. You don't have a business. You just have you and your dog. Or you have you and your apartment. That's still worthy of planning. You are worth making a plan. You need a will, which only operates at your death. You need a power of attorney for finance, which only operates while you're alive. And that means you're giving authority to someone to maybe make a disability application for you or go to your bank so they can pay your bills because it's just you as a person. There's no trust involved. It's just you. And then that advanced healthcare directive, which
so
allows...
important. Because what if something happens and you don't want to be left on life support for years? But if it's not written down anywhere and you've not given anybody the authority to make the decision, what's going to happen?
Right? Just like it's the court's job to figure out what your intention was, it's the hospital's job to keep you alive. So you have some decisions to make that are just about you. I happen to love chocolate. I love chocolate to the point of being willing to sacrifice some things in order to have it. Okay? So, in my advanced healthcare directive, I have a little note that says, if you're trying to appease me, use dark chocolate and not milk chocolate or white chocolate. I want dark chocolate. That's what I like. How would anybody know that? Of course, now everybody knows that. Thanks. But that idea of, what's important to you, put it in writing. That way nobody has to guess. And that way, if you can't speak or you've hit your head or you have aphasia and you're not able to express yourself clearly, somebody's going to want those instructions to take good care of you.
Yep. I've had a client, Marguerite, your story about chocolate, it reminds me of this client I had. She had always, right? Well, I don't say long time. Part of her ritual was a glass or two of wine every night.
Why not?
But how are the caregiving organizations supposed to know this? Or, and I've seen this a lot, what happens when the family says, I don't care that mom's, 90 and she's been having a glass of wine for the last 75 years of her life. We're stopping it now. Well, if it's important to mom because that's part of the ritual and she enjoys it and it's quality of life. What I'm understanding from you with the whole chocolate example is if that's written as that's what she wants to have happen, then it would have to happen.
Give me something to work with so I can defend the life you created. You made this life, okay? I want you to keep your life your way as long as possible. Give me the tools so I can do that. And if you get something in writing, like even your personal belongings, I mean, look around your place right now. There's some things that are important that your child receives. It doesn't matter what their dollar value is. You don't want those things sold to take care of you. You want that child to receive those things. It's that kind of decision that's important. And you're the only one who knows the answers. Don't let somebody else answer that for you. So when you talk with the estate planning attorney and you have strong feelings about anything, here's my rule. Tell the attorney everything. The attorney is supposed to keep your secrets. You're not telling your children. Now, if you and your spouse go to that attorney together, the attorney can't keep secrets from your spouse. Okay? I happen to have a separate property trust and I have a mutual trust with my husband. When it comes to mutual trust, oh yeah, we both meet with that attorney. We're both in that conversation. It affects all of our children. And I'm in a blended family, right? So that's part of it. But then I have a separate property trust. My husband's aware of it and we've talked about it, but he doesn't want anything to do with my trust business. Okay. He doesn't think about that. He doesn't worry about it. That's my thing. Well, I have a separate trust for that. So you can have it any way you want it as long as you do the planning.
So there's often this statement like, okay, so when somebody's looking to find a therapist, right? And I've heard this in this context, right? Just keep going to different therapists until you find the right fit. So would you say that that same thing applies to an attorney? Because what if somebody is meeting with an attorney, but it doesn't seem like the attorney is kind of provoking those questions to go deep? Because it seems to me some would be better than others. Some would be like, okay, let's just draft the basics. And then others are going to sit down and do a full-on consultative intake, asking those hard pointed questions to make the client think.
Yeah, earlier in this interview, I suggested that you interview a few attorneys. So, we could talk about a list of questions right now. Essentially, what do you charge? How does it work? What information do I need to bring to our first meeting? Can we just meet virtually for now? What will it look like when I get my documents? Will you keep the originals? I mean, you should feel free to have that 15-minute conversation with a professional. You can't ask their advice, like, what should I do about this? That's not the right question. It's more like, how does it work for the two of us? How does communication work? Are we going to be emailing? Will we be using the telephone? Do you prefer in person? Like, how does this work with you? And just in that conversation, a lot of adults are able to feel chemistry or not. Feel heard. You really want someone who understands what you're saying. So if you feel like you have to over-explain, this may not be the right professional for you. And a lot of attorneys I know totally welcome that 15-minute call.
Okay, good. So I guess the point is to the audience, just because you talk to one attorney doesn't mean that you've got to sign, okay, this is the one. It's okay to do the 15-minute call with multiple attorneys and then make your decision.
Right. If you're a single parent and you can't afford a big ticket, ask, would you accept payments from me? I did that with my first plan. I made little tiny payments as I could afford to make them. And the attorney I was working with said, just keep paying. And eventually, and it took me 2.5 years to pay off my estate plan for my first one. And so, you don't know if you don't ask. And by the way, if you get that feeling that this isn't fit, you're right. Yeah. You're sovereign. You are sovereign. This is about you, your plan, how you want things to go. This may be the most luxurious thing you ever purchased for yourself. And let me tell you, you are the most worthy, most expensive thing you will ever own. take good care.
So true.
Right?
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, as attorneys and clients get their plans written and updated, what would you like them to know?
So updates come because of different things. Like you said, life keeps changing, and it's true. Our children grow up, they end up with their own lives. Maybe they date somebody you don't like. There's all kinds of things, right? Like that. But then while you're living your life and your children are living their lives, laws change. And there's two kinds of laws that change. There's legislative law. Congress keeps meeting, and they're going to keep changing the estate taxes and stuff, that's going to happen. But then there's also case law. People end up with difficult situations. They bring it to court. The court makes a decision, or it's a jury decision. And that decision adjusts the law and how some documents are written. Okay. If you have a good attorney, that attorney is going to alert you from time to time that something has changed that will affect your documents. Just in 2017, there were some laws that not only changed the estate tax rules, but also changed our retirement account rules. Yeah. And a couple of sentences in your document make a big difference in terms of how that money gets paid out later. So my attorney said, you might want to come in because, and I said, okay, let's schedule it. And I think it cost me not even $200 to get the change made, because I have that relationship and that attorney, and I'm on top of it. Okay?
And it's so important to make those changes. What was this whole Prop 19? I kept hearing attorneys talk about Prop 19, and they were so busy.
So I think a lot of people looked at the television commercials, saw an old person say, save us, and then they voted for Prop 19, which is not really the savings that people were hoping for. What it has done is it's changed the way that we can transfer our property to our children. And you may recall those fans of Prop 13 meant that you could keep the same cost basis, meaning the tax basis in your house. So I'll give you an example. You bought your house for $100,000, and now that you're going to sell it, it's worth $500,000. So it makes sense, right, that you'd have to pay taxes on the gain from the $100,000 to the $500,000. Mm-hmm. And if you wait until you pass away, there's what's called a step up in basis, meaning now the house is worth $500,000. There's no gain to account for. Well, with Prop 13, we could transfer that basis so our kids paid the same amount of property taxes as the parents did.
Okay.
Well, with Prop 19, you have to do more planning, and you need to talk with an attorney about your plans for your property, because the deadline is already passed. And now when you pass your property to your kids, there's different rules. So I can't go into that in any detail now. I'm not an expert on Proposition 19. I'm going to strongly recommend you speak to an attorney if you're worried about how your property will transfer to the next generation.
Okay, perfect. And last question. I know we've taken a lot of your time. Thank you. What do you say? Well, I'm so happy that you're finally a guest. I've been doing these since April, and I've been just waiting for the day that you would be on here. What do you say to those who think they might want to become a professional trustee?
I would start with the Trustee Alliance. And I would take a look at California's licensing. Even though there's not licensing in other states, you really want to have some good standards to start with. If you have a heart for this work, I really appreciate you joining us. By the way, there are only about 700 active licensees in the whole state of California. When you think that we have more than 40 million people, there's plenty of work for everyone. And you have to be prepared to really follow the rules. And there's lots of them: city, state, county, federal, right? In terms of the trust document itself, it's kind of its own law. And you have to be able to work with other professionals well in order to get things done for your clients. But there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room to do this work. And we have some resources in the comments. Certainly read Ethics for Trustees. I know it's my book, but I wrote it intentionally to give you basics so that you can decide if this is really the work for you.
Yeah, I've always been really impressed, Marguerite, because ever since the day that I met you, my gosh, I think it was back in 2011 or 2012, you're a professional fiduciary, but it seems like at the end of the day, you're an educator. You know, you always lead with education. And I really feel like that makes families feel comfortable, and it makes other professionals feel comfortable with working and collaborating with you, you know?
Thank you. I think the worst thing that any of us feel is when we feel like we have no choice. So the opposite is really what I'm aiming for. I want everyone I work with to feel like they have a choice, especially with clients, because when we do, and that makes us feel like ourselves, like we have our own life. We're able to live it because we get to choose.
That makes sense. So how can, so anybody listening, and when I repost this as a YouTube, if they're interested in exploring your firm to be a trustee for them, any of the professionals out there that have referrals, you know, to name you guys in documents, people that want the book, how can they contact you and get this information?
So I've added our website, mytrustee.net, and it actually has a button on how to name us, because we have some instructions for that. And we're delighted to be informed that we have been named. We delight in receiving a copy of the documents. We promise to keep them safe. We promise to hang on to them. We also, once we get the documents, we are sending out a letter to that client that says, thank you for the documents. Here's some other documents we'd love to have for your file. And then once a year, we send out a newsletter, just one. We're just there to just touch base, let you know that we're here. We don't need to talk with you unless you want to talk with us. The idea is that we just stay in touch so that you know we're in the background and we're ready to serve you whenever you need us. And a lot of people have taken us up on that. We have lots of documents in our files, and we're very proud of that. We're very proud to be trusted, and we're really happy doing this work.
Good. Thank you so much for being my guest today. As a reminder, my name is Sarah Barker, founder of Connect Our Elders. My entire intention is to empower the aging process through providing education on resources, navigation through those resources, and ongoing advocacy. Thank you so much for joining me today with Marguerite Lorenz, managing partner of Lorenz Private Trustees. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.